And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock, Wednesday, September 24th. I am Josh Engelman. That right there, Eric Lindquist. We booted Greg. He was awful yesterday. We didn't want him anymore. So we're bringing Eric back. Much better show now. I definitely didn't say this exact same thing yesterday when we swapped out the opposite direction. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. What's going on, brother?
Not much. Just ready for a little MLB here. Got some bets in, got some pick'em cards together. Got, FanDuel playing quite a bit over there, in addition to the DK mini max and some of the, 20 max stuff that I'm firing up over there. So, I'm pretty ready to rock on this, but I got to ask, why does everybody want to, well, specifically, why does Greg want to chop off my cock all the time? What is actually wrong with this person?
So I got to be honest. It strikes me as weird.
It's not normal. It's not something you do at your place of employment. And yet Greg sitting here telling us what to do. By the way, check out his show starting up in 57 minutes. That's going to be good times. Covering NFL, covering a lot of great boosts here on Stokastic too. We're excited to have that kind of being brought to you right after this. You don't have to go anywhere. You're going to be able to kick around and then tell him what an idiot he is right after this.
I thought we agreed to not promote Greg.
Oh yeah, we did. But I then remembered that I, for the most part, feel bad for him because he's obviously obsessed with me.
It seems like that may be true. We can address all of this at 7 p.m. Eastern time when Greg goes live. Make sure you're tuning in and asking all of the pertinent questions. So you and I did not talk about the slate yesterday, but today we're kind of doing the exact same thing once again. While yesterday was a 7K Bryce Miller that ultimately was pedestrian, today is $7,700 Luis Castillo, number one in the top two pitcher odds, number one in the top two value odds, and north of 40% ownership. The exact same scenario that we're getting to from yesterday. Only I would argue that I think Castillo looks even better than Bryce Miller did. How do you want to handle Luis Castillo today?
Yeah, I was a little upset yesterday at Bryce Miller because I had no interest in playing him in DFS, and then Tyler Freeman got scratched. I was not going to play a lot of I just wasn't going to play like any of him there. And then I ended up betting Bryce Miller over 6.5 strikeouts like an absolute fish, but it was plus 117, and Tyler Freeman got scratched and the number didn't move. And it ended up closing around minus 110, so I got some CLV, but like it almost went from like negatively, like it went from like a terrible play to potentially just like a break even play. And so again, I kind of quick triggered it thinking it would look really good, and it did. We'll see what happens. I don't think he's going to be in the lineup again today for what it's worth. We're getting to the end of the season. There's no point if he's actually dinged up and scratch worthy that you'd put him in unless he was like completely fine. So my assumption is the same as yours. I think Castillo is going to look better than Miller did. And I don't like Castillo overall. I think that that's just kind of the way that it works. But I'm pulling up my sheet here now. Colorado, you've got 1 through 9. We are going to get some strikeouts. And Bernabel, one of the guys who avoids it sitting in the 8 hole. No Tyler Freeman. This just looks completely different. He's going to strike out all the righties. He's going to be somewhat efficient against lefties. He has a 1.5 earned run prop. He's in the best pitcher's park in baseball. I don't know how you get away from playing lots of him today, and I felt the exact opposite about Miller yesterday until I pivoted all of my stuff to involve him last second, which sucked.
So yesterday, I obviously, he was clearly a great play on paper. There was no way to like really look at it, but I didn't want to have a massive stand because I thought there were two other arms in the 7K range that were fine. One of them ended up being awesome. Luis Heel ended up looking a lot like Bryce Miller. Today, you've got Luis Castillo at 7,700 with the top two pitcher odds. And then the next pitchers in this range are 9,700, 9K, 10,7, 10,2, 8,500, 9,200, 8,300. It's just a different slate today than what it was yesterday. The stacks will link into this conversation later because that's sort of the same, but not, at least earlier this morning, wasn't operating the same. So I'm happy to get to Castillo. I expect to have, something in that like 60 to 80 range by the time we're all said and done. I think the most interesting question for today's slate is what the hell do we do with the payouts? Fried, Crochet, Snell. We have all of these lefty arms that are incredibly expensive today that strike out boatloads of dudes and have different qualifications for parks and matchups today. DeGrom against Minnesota, Sonny Gray in San Francisco here against the Giants. When I started the day, I thought Robbie Ray was pitching. Halfway through the strategy show, we found out that was JT Brubaker. So that changed because Ray was pulling ownership. How do you want to pay up today? I didn't even mention Hunter Brown. Hunter Brown.
Yeah, completely depends on how many lineups you're playing is probably the first thing to say. Like if you're playing one lineup, picking a second is very, very difficult. If you're playing 150 like I am today, it's a lot less difficult because I can kind of spray and pray and let the Sims tool kind of do its thing. In this last run, it ended up being Max Fried who ended up kind of getting to the top. And I think I'm okay with that. I'm not the biggest Max Fried guy. He's coming off of 13 strikeouts against Baltimore. This is not Baltimore. The White Sox with, a lot of their main strikeout guys out, Luis Robert coming to mind right off the bat. There's that. He also neutralizes somewhat a Colson Montgomery who has been on another planet. Thank you for going yard there. But he's just one of those dudes who has crazy splits as well. We have so many of them like Will Warren and Max Fried. It's right around 31% of lefties he's going to be striking out, but like he doesn't strike out righties all that much. And so he's one of those guys that whenever I'm updating stuff night before, I just end up really figuring out like where I think these lineups are going to land. Cause like a Brooks Baldwin switch hitter, Corey Julks is in this lineup today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Colson Montgomery is the only lefty that we have in this lineup today. So it's not a great strikeout spot, but like it's such a weak lineup that he's getting more opportunities at the cookie, getting more opportunities just by pitching deeper into a game and finding his upside that way. And you just kind of compare his strikeout props. It's about where I would be looking at 5.5, juiced pretty heavily towards the over. I think maybe, entertaining an under, if I were doing anything in that direction, but, you compare that to what you're getting here in a very expensive Garrett Crochet. Yeah, he's got the strikeout stuff, but like this is Toronto that we're talking about. And every single time it's insane to me how Toronto just cripples some of these guys in terms of their strikeout equity. 6.5 sitting at basically neutral both sides for Garrett Crochet is not something we're used to seeing. So I think finding the discount to Max Fried is just fine. If I were playing single entry, I think there's one other pitcher as we move down the board and get cheaper in Matt Boyd that I think I would be interested in just completely punting and going way down to, just because Wyndon and Wrigley, you just kind of run into 6 innings and maybe a little bit of a strikeout upside. I love the idea of Matt Boyd, but what were you going to say?
So yesterday I did the same. Who the fuck was it? Was it David Peterson? Yeah, it was. It was Peterson. Yeah. So yesterday during the show, it was like, hey, Greg, can I interest you in this Cubs Mets game? David Peterson, wind blowing in Wrigley. And then it was like 9:00 at night and I opened the MLB app and it was like 8-8 or something in that game. I was like, oh shit, that went the wrong direction. So it was funny to hear you be like, oh Boyd, wind blowing in. I felt like I was just hearing myself say the same stuff from yesterday. So I did not look at Matt Boyd this morning on the strategy show. I hit Castillo, Fried, DeGrom, Crochet, Snell, Hunter Brown. We're going to get to Stephen Kolek in a second. I was looking at Jonah Tong's name and combined them in my head. Talk to me about Matt Boyd, because that's going to be fresh information to the channel.
Yeah, so for me, Matthew Boyd is low owned. So there's that. He's 8,300. So you're getting a pretty steep discount from a Blake Snell at 10-2, 10-7, sitting for Garrett Crochet. So you're saving 2,500, which does a lot in terms of the bats that I want to get to. Some of the stacks that I find to be more intriguing and lower owned. If I'm playing one lineup or if I'm playing 20, I'm playing 150. So like, I'm still going to make some calculated stands. Matt Boyd's probably somebody who'll just sneak into that 10, 12% number. But if you're making one lineup, there's no way that he gets steamed up. And he's got pretty neutral splits in terms of what his strikeout equity of both sides of the plate are. And obviously with the Mets, they are in a very, gotta have it type of situation. And they're going to roll out all these righties and it's going to look all right. And it doesn't really matter because the win in Wrigley just kind of stops the Mets from doing the one thing that they try to do every single time out. And that's win by way of the long ball. Guys like Pete Alonso, guys like Juan Soto. I'm not saying that they can't hit it yard here against him, but you do get Soto, you do get Nimmo. They're not great strikeout opportunities for Matt Boyd, but he's juiced pretty heavily over 4.5. Think about saving $2,500 with Wyndon and Wrigley and a pretty good opportunity, like a juiced over 4.5 number. And you compare that to 5.5, 6.5, which are really the only other ones that are on the board for more expensive numbers. And I would say exponentially more difficult matchups. I don't know why Matt Boyd isn't higher owned than he is, but that said, I'm not finding a ton of need in my 150 portfolio to like get to tons of him. But if I'm playing one lineup and the one stack I would want to play today in single entry, I think he's a very interesting person for you people out there playing one lineup.
So that's sort of where I landed on Stephen Kolek this morning. A slightly different price range. Obviously, he's $1,300 cheaper. Chat brought him up 9.5% top two pitcher odds, so about 2% behind Boyd. Very similar ownership. You're obviously getting a bigger value piece for Kolek. If I pull it up on Add More Funds, 19.5% K rate to lefties, meh. 14.5% K rate to righties, non-existent. Now, righties don't touch him at all. 291x WOBA. Yeah. He's neutralizing those guys. He's just not doing it via strikeout. So I was like, he's probably not going to look all that great, because in my mind, I didn't calibrate the matchup properly. So then I pulled up the strikeout props and I was like, let's see it. It's probably like 3.5 or something, because he's not much of a strikeout guy. 4.5 with a little bit of juice to the over. And the moment I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, the Angels strike out against everybody. So he's sitting there at 7K with a strikeout prop that he legitimately does not deserve from a personal standpoint. This is a matchup-based strikeout rate in and of itself. At $700 cheaper than Luis Castillo, obviously we're taking a haircut here from 25% top two pitcher to 10, but we're also taking a haircut in ownership here from 43 to 7. And I think that's a little bit disproportionate. This is exactly how I felt yesterday. It's not that I don't want Castillo, but if I'm getting 90, I'd rather have 70 and have 20% more of Kolek. And then I'm just taking a stand on both of those guys.
Yeah, I'm playing quite a few lineups in like the 55 on FanDuel where it's like a 400-person field. And Castillo's sitting there. And my game plan is, with some of these earlier stacks that I'm playing, I'm just going to pivot to Stephen Kolek if I'm way behind. Like, if I'm sitting pretty dead in some spots, I'm going to try to just go to Stephen Kolek. And he's like my emergency system. That's always something I think about in baseball when I'm playing, like, calculating. Because like FanDuel, I'm playing fewer lineups than DK, but like I'm playing more volume. And so like I'm paying attention to those a little bit more. I think that's a really sharp shout out. Like, Stephen Kolek is there. I have far more interest in him just because he has a right hand and he's going up against the Angels. And, if you're right-handed and you go up against the Angels, you should probably have some interest. And Luis Castillo is pulling almost 50% ownership on FanDuel right now. And so some of those lineups where I have contrarian stacks where I'm playing Luis Castillo in them, I do plan on going to Stephen Kolek if I'm way behind, or, for whatever the situation might be where I need to be late swapping and try to get cute or do something different with those lineups, just to try to salvage some minimum cashes and stuff in some of those. So I definitely had him on my radar. I think for DK, I don't need that many savings, but the difference from like a 10-2 to an 8,300 for Boyd and then playing him with a Castillo, I think is interesting. But I think the same thing, keep it somewhat in the back of your mind that, like, if you're playing some later stacks, Castillo 7,700, Stephen Kolek 7K, you can kind of make those assessments, but I'll probably have mixing and matching of Kolek in the 150 here as I update everything, and I'll kind of see where I land.
It's always very interesting. We're about 15 minutes into the show right now. And from a matchup standpoint, we have not talked about $10,700 most expensive Garrett Crochet, $10,200 second most expensive Blake Snell, both about 15% owned, both in and around 15% in the top two pitcher odds. How do you want to calibrate these guys? Are you going to get to them? Is that interesting to you? Do you look at Castillo and think, well, maybe I can just double pay up today with two or three of the, well, two in this case, but like two of the 3 or 4 like legit high-end arms, because we have value stacks that will make that work. Are you expecting to get to a lot of Crochet and Snell? Because I obviously don't love both of those spots. There's a reason they're 5th and 6th or 4th and 5th in top two pitcher odds.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about both of them is that they have the second and third lowest strikeout rates against lefties for active rosters that we've got going today. I mean, Arizona, 17.9% K rate versus lefties for Blake Snell. And then you look at a guy like Garrett Crochet, 18.6% for Toronto, 107 WRC plus, 111 WRC plus for Arizona. So like, no matter which way you slice it, it's just an awful situation to walk into. And I can't really find myself getting up to them as much. Like, they have way more arm talent. They have better strikeout rates, but like some of these inflated spots are so cheap. Like your Stephen Kolek shutout is so cheap. Matt Boyd for me is somebody who can pitch 6 innings and, you know, kind of go by way a different route than some of the other guys. And I'm not like, again, I just think that it's more of just like, what can he get you in your lineup than it is like I'm attacking upside with Matthew Boyd. But I do think that they're intriguing purely because of who they are, and they might end up lower owned than we think. But like at their current projection, I have so much more interest in just going cheaper down the board. And that has not been the thing I've said a lot this season. It's just, these are very difficult matchups. And think about the quick hooks coming too. Both teams are in situations somehow, some way where, I mean, now that we've gone to this 16 format for the playoffs or whatever it is, where you have 6 wild card games going, or 3 series for the wild card going in, I find it hard to believe that these aren't very important games with quick hooks attached to them for both of these guys. Blake Snell got pushed a little bit more than, I'm assuming, Dave Roberts, who likes to limit everybody, had to go out last time. And then you have a Garrett Crochet where, you know, he's the most talented strikeout pitcher on the entire slate. I don't think anybody's going to question that, but the risk of ruin. I mean, the guy has been giving up he's given up 8 homers his last 4. I mean, this is something that is very, very terrifying if you run into a situation where you've paid up for a 10-7 Garrett Crochet and he's not rattling off 4 or 5 strikeouts in the first 2 or 3 frames, because there are some bad things that can happen along the way. So it's a small sample size thing, but I just think they're over-owned today.
I have another pitcher that I want to ask you about.
Oh, God. Tong?
I don't think anybody... Would you like to see that Tong today?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing that we were talking about for him. He's a little bit cheaper. I think there's negative regression coming for him in some way, shape, or form. Like, I mean, he is not very good. That's why he's priced kind of where he is. He had a really good debut. And then since, I mean, we've seen kind of what the warts can be for him, but he has some strikeout potential, even though this is not the easiest Cubs lineup here. And then you get Pete Crow Armstrong, who's just been horrendous. So like, at the same time that he can be a good hitter from like months ago, he always had a strikeout rate that you wanted higher up in the lineup. Moises Ballesteros just really isn't a strikeout guy. You go to his AAA numbers at Iowa, you go to anything that he's got going, that's not who you want to see necessarily in the cleanup spot. But Michael Busch leading off, scary, but also somebody who can definitely run into strikeouts. And I think he's probably going to end up being a little bit more popular than we have projected. But I think there are just so many cheap guys that we can kind of rotate into lineups and get 10, 12, 15% of. And if we're getting over the field on all of them, I like that than playing a lot more than playing a 15, 20% of a 10-7 Crochet, of a 10-2 Blake Snell in spots that I just truly think their teams will do everything that they can to win the games. And if they're not getting the strikeouts to come along with it, are in terrifying matchups where strikeouts are hard to come by in the first place.
That Tong had 20 starts in Double-A this year with a crisp 41% strikeout rate. He only got 2 more starts in Triple-A, 38. Last year across all of the minors, 34% strikeout rate. It's interesting to see that Zips doesn't give a shit about his strikeouts, which I don't understand. Steamer gets him to like 26%. Oopsie gets him up to like 28%. This is a guy that has just never stopped mowing. Like, you can see all the levels here in the Ks per 9. Like, some of those samples are small. It's 11 to 17 across his entire minors setup. And we've got this dude in a park where allegedly the wind is blowing in. That no one seemed to give a shit yesterday. But it's like, he's free at 6,700. He's $1,000 cheaper than Luis Castillo. The Cubs have a 3.9 run implied total. And there's a pitcher with 35% K rates in the minors at 6,700, and he's 8% owned today.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I'm getting to like 12% right now. I'm probably get a little bit more now that we've even like talked through it. He's definitely the other cheapie that we can talk about for sure. I just think that he's like a newer Nick Pivetta. He's a young 22-year-old Nick Pivetta. He's going to give up power to both sides. His changeup is one that looks like it'll be live, but like, That's where this team has individual hitters. Michael Busch is the best changeup hitter in all of baseball. The guy has a 470 expected ISO against right-handed changeups.
Yeah.
It's an absurd number for Michael Busch in my sheet. And the more you work through these guys individually, like Pete Crow Armstrong, we're getting a different version of him right now. Maybe he's hurt. Maybe he's just negatively regressing. Maybe there's more tape on him over the course of the last year plus where guys know how to pitch to him in some kind of a way. I'm not going to speak to that or the nuance, but what I do know is that his 200 expected ISO has not been playing as such, and it won't play as such with the wind blowing in here. And that's against the changeup specifically that I was talking about for that too. But I think that pitch in particular for Tong has an opportunity to be unbelievable because he gets a ton of ground balls with it against lefties, and that's kind of got to be your go-to. If you're looking at like what Jonah Tong can do at the big league level to try to stop some of the power that he's given up. What I find interesting about him as well is he never really gave up power in AAA or at any stage of Major League ball. And now it's starting to pop up in a way where Major League hitters have a way of doing that. They have a way of exploiting your weaknesses, and he's a fly ball pitcher. So there is no doubt that like if he can be effective with the changeup at the big league level and get ground balls with it, he's going to be an unbelievable arm talent. But everything, the whole package isn't quite there yet, but the price tag makes up for it. The weather makes up for it. And yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think that that's a really sharp shout out from you.
I'm intrigued. He's going to end up getting blasted now, which is going to be super annoying for me. But he's somebody that I didn't talk about earlier this morning, and I desperately wish that I had. But, you know, time is of the essence. I've only got an hour in the mornings. Are we missing anybody? I'm going to open this one up to chat here. Is there a pitcher we haven't talked about yet that you want to hear a little bit more of? And if it's like, yeah, Hunter Brown or something. I hit that on the strategy show this morning, and he's already good. Like, we know he's good. It's just a shit matchup.
I got a disgusting one.
Hold on, let me look.
I think he's the guy that I'm probably going to be the most overweight to relative to his current ownership.
I know I'd like to think it's one of two guys, but there's a third that you could potentially say. My first thought was Kikuchi, but I think it's going to be Taj Bradley.
It is Taj Bradley.
Okay. I was going to say we could also have a conversation about Max Scherzer, but talk to me about Taj Bradley.
So Texas is now kind of packing it in. And obviously yesterday you got a dinged up Wyatt Langford. That is not good for them. This lineup brings in Billy McKinney. Billy McKinney at every stop is absolutely horrendous. And Taj Bradley, this has been a terrible year for him by any metric. He couldn't really pitch in Tampa in the new confines. And then he goes here to Minnesota in the trade or whatever it was. And it just hasn't been pretty by any means. But Taj Bradley's better than a 6K pitcher in Arlington, a really good pitcher's park to be in. And what he does for your lineups is kind of the same thing that a Tong does, that everybody else does, but he's sitting around 6%. And I mean, I don't know how you value this Texas lineup looking at it in any way, shape, or form. You get a leadoff Jock Peterson, who goes yard yesterday. I know he was crazy popular as that news came out, well ahead of time. That lineup came out well ahead of time. But like, the whole thing with Taj Bradley is that he gives up lefty power, 199 expected ISO. It's been horrendous. This is not a good ballpark for lefty power, despite what Corey Seager's shown us over the course of the last few years. And then you add on top of it that what lefties have power in this lineup outside of the guys who strike out a bunch and more than make up for it here for you. You get Rowdy Tellez, you get Jock Peterson, who, has been better in that department to some extent, but like Josh Young higher up in the lineup, 25.5% K rate, Rowdy Tellez, 26%. This is a really good spot for a guy that, and do the Twins give a shit about putting Taj Bradley out there to go, let him go pitch a bunch? I surely don't think so. So there's no limitations whatsoever. I feel really good about Taj Bradley, and I know his ownership isn't going anywhere.
No, he's not going to be pulling anything of substance today. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Scares the hell out of me, though.
Oh, yeah. He's been awful this entire year, but like in terms of a 6K, you would not at the beginning, if you go to March of this year and you saw a 6K Taj Bradley, what would his ownership be on this slate?
40.
Yeah, there'd be something.
He'd look like Castillo. He'd look like Castillo.
He would look like Castillo. And the difference between like somebody who we have a ton of sample size on and Taj Bradley's only 24 years old. So like, I don't think this is like wear and tear. I think Maybe what he is somebody who just needs to be converted into a bullpen arm because he has a very live fastball. He throws at 96. You could probably elevate that to 97, 98 coming out of the pen. And maybe that's what we decide to do with Taj Bradley next year. But I just don't think this is that scary of a matchup. I mean, outside of Jock Peterson, Rowdy Tellez, who we know have power, you're getting a ton of strikeouts. You are getting a ton of strikeouts with some of these individual guys. And Wyatt Langford, probably the best ball player that has been in the lineup here since Corey Seager got dinged up, that Texas puts out there on a day in, day out basis. He's not there. This is a very weak, very awful Texas lineup.
Let me see what chat's got to say here. Josh Gillum says any Kikuchi. I just have multiple dudes that I prefer over him at this point.
So, I mean, we brought up all these K rates for guys going up against lefties, like through and through. In baseball, we have Arizona, Toronto, not terribly far behind, 21st, 21.5% K rate for their active roster, just an 84 WRC plus. So, like, there is some hope because they've just been so bad against lefties, but I can't do it in a huge ballpark upgrade for Kansas City. I'm on Sal Perez, I'm on Bobby Witt, I'm on those guys quite a bit today, and then from a betting perspective on them as well.
All right. Let's see. We talked about Kolek.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tanner Gordon.
No.
He's not Brown. McCade Brown has actual stuff. So, I mean, while that was an outlier, there's that. Tanner Gordon, no thank you.
No, there's absolutely no reason to do that. There's so many better options in better places than what we have there. And if you just, it's just no. I just don't have much to say about Sonny Gray. Like, I like the spot in San Francisco. He is a really interesting balance of top to end value. But I just seem to be getting more of Castillo, more of Fried. I'd like to go to more of Tong or Kolek. He's just kind of in like no man's land at 8,500.
Yeah, he's in no man's land, and I'm just going to kind of hold hands with the field on him. Great ballpark, decent enough strikeout stuff, gives up power. There's a lot of room for things to find gaps there in San Francisco still. Plus, I don't know what to make of it, but like some of the last like 3-4 weeks, maybe the wind's just affecting the ball more or what's going on there, but it's a ballpark that's built to mitigate the wind. And for whatever reason, the totals have just been going over religiously there for like 3 weeks. I think it speaks to more how bad San Francisco's pen is, how bad their starting pitching has been overall than it is anything else. So the ballpark hasn't been able to save them, and they've, been the home team that's had to play a lot in the ninth inning. So I don't want to read too much into it, but I'm going to have like right around 14-15% of them.
Well, we've reached the bottom of the hour. We're at the midway point of this show, which makes for an excellent transition to the Top Stacks tool. Guys, hit that like button, though. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe to the channel, notification bell. Reminder, Greg going live immediately after this at 7 p.m. Talking Thursday night football from a bunch of different angles. So he's going live solo after this bad boy. You don't want to miss that one. Make sure you're checking that one out. We've got a very interesting Top Stacks setup for today. We've been doing this kind of thing, what feels like a couple days now, where the Yankees are the overwhelming top stack here at 12.5%. Houston and the Dodgers are both 2 percentage points behind that at 10%. But the massive difference in those three teams comes to price. The Yankees are 2.5% top value. The Dodgers are 3. The Astros are 14, which is leading the Astros to have an 11.5 stack score. That's 4 points ahead of the Yankees at 7.5. 5 points almost ahead of the Dodgers at 6.8. You see teams much further down the list like Texas, St. Louis, Kansas City coming in with higher stack scores than the Yankees and the Dodgers. I know who I like the most today, and I know who I like second and third. Where are you going here today? Because I think there's a clear answer.
Wow, interesting. So my favorite that exists is Houston, but I think Houston's going to be very, very popular. And I'm a little bit worried about them. I think they're very accessible and easy to get to. I think they're going to get paired with expensive pitchers a lot. And I think the number of times that we pull up ownership at the end of the night and we see, I mean, Pena got dinged up at 4,500. He was really like the only expensive bat that we have left, with Yordan Alvarez out of the lineup as well. And we've heard how many times from Luis Severino how much he hates pitching in this ballpark. Well, it definitely shows out too. He has a 1.07 whip on the road, 1.61 in this ballpark. He has a 220 batting average allowed on the road, 297 batting average here, and to round it all out, 3.14 ERA on the road. Do you know his ERA at home this season?
5.1.
6.51. It is absurd how bad Luis Severino is in this ballpark. And it's mental. It's a lot of things, but the data clearly shows that he is awful. He is not suited for pitching in this ballpark, and it's driven him nuts. He talked about it right at the deadline. Emac, you were so close. That was lovely for you to even try. But it's truly some of the biggest like home road splits, like Coors Field type stuff you'll see. So I think Houston's the most popular, and they should, like, I think when we get to lock, if the Yankees aren't completely jammed, I think we're going to see some very heavy ownership on Houston. And I think they're clearly your number one. I'm just nervous about it, Josh. I'm really nervous about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we've got the Yankees, the Astros, the Dodgers, and the Royals, all essentially 10% owned. They're all pulling the same thing. I'm surprised that Houston's ownership isn't higher. Every lineup I built with them today just looked insane. If I would put in a 5-man Houston stack, could take whoever I wanted, I'd get as good a 2 pitchers as I can get, whether that's 2 pay-ups or Castillo plus 1 of the pay-ups. And the 3 remaining spots were like Judge, Ohtani, and Mookie Betts or something like that. Like you can fill out with anything you want if you go to Houston. And that really doesn't matter what pitcher combination you take at that point. That stack score being so disproportionately high in comparison to everybody else is going to lead to one of 2 things. Either these guys are under-owned, and I do want to have all of them, or something in this data is tough to replicate for a pool, and they're just going to be quite a bit more owned than this. Now, in smaller field stuff, in higher dollar stuff, I do expect them to be much higher because they're a much chalkier, or they're a much more cashy type team. Because of that value, you tend to see those sorts of rates climb a bit. So maybe that's an interesting spot for the smaller field stuff. But in the main, if they really are in shouting distance of the Yankees, the Dodgers, and KC, I think they're the clear top team.
I 100% am with you. And what I find very interesting about this slate and why I'm playing more and why I'm playing both sites, I've got more volume in play today than I probably had in a long time. I love the late swap element to today. There's not enough people who will factor in the early games. And this was kind of the deal. I had something yesterday that I had to attend to, and I brought my computer along because it was like an hour. I was there for an hour. Yeah. So like right before lock, I was just like, oh, I'll just pivot a lot of these lineups to the evening and I'll figure it out then, because we have more than half the slate locking way after we get done with this show. We have the White Sox and Yankees, I'm going to be paying very close attention to their ownership. And then we have Boston, Toronto with 2 very serviceable starting pitchers, some of the better starting pitchers in baseball. So I doubt we're going to see any kind of ownership there. But like the entire slate really plays out if the Yankees don't go nuts, if a pitcher doesn't go completely nuts in that Boston Toronto game. It really begins in the evening window. And like, I'm going to have a pretty good idea based on the Yankees ownership where Houston's going to land, and also where Kansas City's going to land. I think there are people like myself that are paying attention to Kikuchi, and you know,
sure,
it's really hard not to like Bobby Witt and Sal Perez and some of these guys. Miguel Garcia, another one that I'll be getting to quite a bit. It's just a question of like how chalky the Yankees end up, and we're going to get that information. So like, this is more of a late swap NFL type slate than we've had in a long time. Yesterday I wasn't on the show, but like, I love these kind of slates because people will not react to the information that you accumulate as much as they should be. And it's going to inform the other expensive stacks, the Dodgers, where their ownership going to land. Because if the Yankees are very popular, I can't imagine the Dodgers are there. We will have to have a value stack, and that just becomes Houston by default. And then Seattle, I think I love Seattle for tournaments. In the evening window, Colorado bullpen, it's an awful, awful ballpark, but like specifically on DraftKings, we were isolating home runs. What team hits more home runs than this 1 through 7 section with Dominic Canzone now going double dong and doing his thing? I think individual plays from Seattle are just so compelling to me to spend some of that money on. So yeah, expensive pitchers hoping to fail early, hoping that we see the Yankees just keep it somewhat at bay and that their ownership is high.
Based on the way you're saying that, do you prefer the Dodgers to the Yankees because of the late start?
Yes, I'm playing a lot more Dodgers than I am Yankees.
Okay. Greg brought up Seattle yesterday. I didn't like it yesterday. I don't like it again today. It's mostly just the park. I feel like there's just so many teams out there that I can get to that aren't going to be in just a death spot. And now they could obviously very easily bludgeon Tanner Gordon, whatever the hell else they trot out there to step on the mound. I just really don't like targeting that park. If they were a little less owned, it could be a scenario. Like if they were in that 4 or 5 range, like everybody else, I'd feel a bit better. But I mean, we've got them with 7% top stack odds, 7% ownership. Probably not a team I'm going to be angling for. I took a much deeper look at Texas earlier today against Taj Bradley because they're sort of like the lesser top stack version of Houston, but still you can get to every single player in the lineup that you like. You don't have to pick and choose. You have infinite salary if you play teams like Texas and Houston today. I don't have much of a lean between the Yankees and the Dodgers. I do like the idea of sort of kicking that can down the road a bit and taking that later start. But I mean, there's a lot of garbage out there. Yankees against Tyler Alexander, Houston against Severino, Dodgers against Ryan Nelson, Seattle against Gordon, Kikuchi stinks, Brubaker stinks, Bradley's not very good. I mean, if Stephen Kolek were getting more ownership, I could have a little bit more interest in the Angels, but there's 2 better value stacks ahead of them at least. And I'd rather have a little bit more Kolek than anything else. And then you start working your way down and it's like, not too much of this looks great. Because then you get to the opposite side of the pitching and it's Fried, Castillo, Crochet, DeGrom, Snell. Like one of those dudes is going to get absolutely wrecked today. One of these like high end arms is going to give up, 3 home runs and 7 earned or something. I think there's enough relatively low owned stuff in the top half of our top stacks tool that it's very easy to just roster all the hitting you like today, especially if you're using Castillo in that lineup, which is basically just like a free square for pitching salary. I like this slate a lot. I'm sure that I'll bitch about it tomorrow morning on the strategy show when I bagel all my lineups or something, but I'm really happy about this. Who's going under the radar? And chat, this is the same question for you guys. Who's the sneak stack today?
I think probably St. Louis for me, but GT Brubaker is awful. Like some of these guys that they're going to be throwing out, San Francisco basically is packing it in as well. So this is just kind of like, what do you like? I mean, he's not going to pitch deep into this game. He pitched on the 20th. He's going to go like 2-3 innings. Everybody in the San Francisco pen after that is going to be somewhat targetable. And St. Louis isn't going to like St. Louis is one of those teams we just don't get a lot of pinch hitting from regardless, because they've been done for like a month as well. And they don't really have the platoon guys. Like they kind of just play their core dudes and roll them out every single day. So kind of puts some of those other issues. Like sometimes we see it with the Yastrzemski or Frazier or some of these other more popular stacks in that evening window, Kansas City, where they'll get pinch hit for somebody. Michael Massey at times, like there's just spots where we've seen that over and over again. Now it's nice to see like a Jack Caglianon that is going to be going left on left in the 8 hole today, right off the bat. So you don't really have to worry about, I think, anybody in the Kansas City lineup today, the way that you have to against righties. But Randall Grichuk, maybe a little bit of pinch hit risk, but he's got such good home run odds for like a guy that is sub 3K. He's like plus 550, I think, top stout, which for a guy who's sub 3K is pretty decent value. It's the same way I felt about Jock yesterday. And boy, the field got there in a big way. But the more that I work through this slate, it just really comes down to hoping popular pitchers early don't smash. Yankees, please don't smash. And then giving myself the opportunity to take the ownership from the Yankees, apply it to the evening window, and have a better idea for it. But I'm deathly afraid of how much Houston I have right now, Josh, and then how popular they end up being. I think that's like the other thing where we could all be kicking ourselves, or we could all be just, you brought it up perfectly. It's like, I think they're the biggest question mark to me on the slate. If you tell me one team's ownership, I'd want Houston's right now.
I have another talking point here, and it kind of circles back to what we were talking about before. So I'm just going to lay it out, and I want to hear what you have to say. All right.
Okay.
3.4% top stack odds is the fifth lowest mark of the day. 1.5% top value, 3% owned. If the Cubs are the fifth worst top stack today, why isn't Jonah Tong more interesting at pitching?
It's a great question. It's actually a really great question. The more you bring this up, the more I think, and this has happened on a couple of slates where you kind of identify a guy, and this is just kind of like our old school brain just being like, well, ownership relative to opportunity to succeed. And you kind of finding this very obvious strikeout arm that is very much going to find strike. Like, he could give up 4 or 5 earned and probably still find 6, 7 strikeouts in 4 innings, 5 innings. So like, I'm probably with you here. I just reran and got to 15%. So like, I'm just like slowly building up my 150 of Jonah Tong. I think he's actually, I've been trying to find the potential like main Castillo guy that isn't like just going to Kolek in the evening window. I think there's something to be said on FanDuel now about getting to Jonah Tong as somebody who just will not get steamed up in any way, shape, or form. He is 6,500 over there. So I'm probably going to play him in like my main single entry lineup, even just talking through this now over there.
Yeah, like the only 4 teams that have a lower top stack odds today face DeGrom, Crochet, Castillo, and Fried. The 2 names on top of Tong are Snell and Gray. But yet he's unowned at no salary as a pitcher. Like, something doesn't compute there. Either we should be way more interested in the Cubs, or we should be way more interested in Tong. But it's a 3.9 run implied total for the Cubs. Something has to give here. I don't know why he's not as represented as he should be if we're to believe how bad the Cubs are in their likelihood of being successful today. I'm fascinated by it. Yeah. I didn't notice this until right now, but it makes me like it even more. Because my first thought was like, oh shit, maybe I should look at the Cubs today as like the opposite side of Tong. And then I saw the ownership and the top stack shit, and I was like, well, that's not the answer.
I just put $50 on fucking Jonah Tong over on Novig. So like, just even talking through this, I just was like, all right, he's plus 117 over 5.5 strikeouts. Just to have something there as we're talking through it, I was like, all right, I'm going to bet that immediately. And I want people to be able to join that because I think you're really onto something with him. I think what happened really with Jonah Tong is like, we saw 82 pitches on the 18th, and we know how bad this Mets team needs to win, where if he gets in trouble, there is bullpen quick hook written all over it to some extent. Like, I'm just pulling back up the standings that I was looking at earlier just to like have an idea of where everybody is. But like, the Mets 67% playoff opportunities. So not do or die the way that it is for Cincinnati that just started, the way it is for Arizona, which went from 6% to 11% with a win against the Dodgers yesterday. So like, there's still teams as we get down to the end of the season where like 2-3 years ago, this didn't matter. But now with the expanded playoffs, like, teams are still trying to win baseball games, and we don't have as many teams packing it in. But like, it does this push and pull where it's like, all right, now if you get into that jam, you are getting quick hooked, especially a 22-year-old with fly ball capabilities. But I do feel good about that win. He's had 2 like over 20 fantasy point outings, his debut, and then his last time out, sandwiched between -13 and 13, basically. And I think his range of outcomes, I mean, yeah, we have to embrace it at this kind of a number. Like, I'm just going to give him a boost. How do you go about doing this now? So I built out my pool. I felt pretty good about it here. I think we've got just about every lineup except for Houston, which is huge with Pena just kind of waiting in the wing. But like, I think I want to add a little bit more of him to the pool so that I get a better idea. I might boost his ownership a tiny bit too as we're talking through it, because I do think there's enough sharp people that'll find this same angle you are, where it's like 9-10%, probably going to be like the minimum number. I do not expect him to be 6-7% for what it's worth.
I got a couple funny things to say here. So I took a screenshot of chat when I asked like, what other teams should we look at? So I was like, what's the consensus out of all of this?
Yeah.
So I didn't have to try to figure it out myself. Red Sox got mentioned a bunch. Rangers got mentioned a bunch. We'll touch on those guys in a second. But it also gave me 2 extra notes. The first is there's weather chatter about the Bay Area. I'm not approaching anything different for weather prior to lock, but it's one of those situations where like be ready to make swaps. But I'm not going to change anything for any of the weather for today. The second one is great. It says a comment that Boyd is cheeks. Likely a negative take on Detroit's Matthew Boyd makes his opponent stack more appealing. That's really funny that ChatGPT like carved that out, that Boyd is cheeks. Red Sox and Rangers got the most steam from chat. Do you have a preference between either one of those 2 teams, or are they just straight no's to you? I lean Texas.
I lean Texas too. You said Boston, the other one, right?
Correct.
Yeah, Boston, the tough thing is Max Scherzer, he got completely bludgeoned in Kauffman. I don't expect that to be the case. There was nothing terribly wrong with him. It was a bad outing. You had a bad day. Like, stuff happens, and I'm just going to fucking move on from it. I'm sure Max Scherzer has. He just went back to being a crazy person, and he'll be just fine. I'm on the under of that game for what it's worth, and I'm just hoping that it's not coming by way of the strikeout. I think we've got Scherzer in a spot where he should find a way to be all right going forward. I mean, he's not the same Max Scherzer. I mean, the strikeout stuff is not nearly what it once was, like not even remotely close, but they're just so expensive. And so like, you're really paying the freight on Boston up against what I still believe is a serviceable major league pitcher who will make adjustments and find ways of being better going forward. But like, yeah, it's really hard for me to want to pull the trigger for Max Scherzer indoors at Toronto.
I think that's a very reasonable stance to have. I feel the same sort of way there. I don't know. It's something about his name. Like maybe that's just poor bias rooting my brain to like what Max Scherzer used to be. I just don't think he's like utter garbage. And I feel like that's how he's being treated at this moment now.
Yep. People have a short attention span, and you know, it's the same thing that I'm hoping maybe happens with some Seattle. Again, I didn't play any Seattle yesterday, but like they go from being like 8-9% to being like 7%. And it wouldn't surprise me if they start sliding a little bit further down. And I think Tanner Gordon is a much worse pitcher than McCade Brown is. I was on McCade Brown over walks yesterday, but that was about it. Wish I was on over strikeout ladder to the moon, because that would have really been fun. But Seattle will strike out for sure. But man is Tanner Gordon bad.
All right, I'm finalizing the rest of my lineups right now. Dude, it's weird how one little 5% boost either direction for me for Stephen Kolek is just like swapping him into everything or nothing. He must just be sitting right on the edge of where my like all of my lineups end up being, which I guess I'm going to have to be okay with. I'm taking a pretty big stand on Kolek and Tong for today. It's taking me away a little bit from some of the more pay up options, but I haven't dialed in my stack exposure yet because it doesn't seem like I need 25% Kansas City.
I'm going to do a little boost to Aaron Judge. So I just got done poo-pooing the Yankees. The one guy I do want to bring along is like with as much Tong as I'm now getting to Kolek, I don't have to manufacture too much, but like Ohtani will be pretty popular in my lineups, but like I kind of want Ohtani Judge lineups. It's still the 2 guys that on any given slate are you're most likely to go yard. I have money to spend now with the Tong that we're getting to. And I was always going to play Taj Bradley in this spot with everybody out. So yeah, I have a lot more cheap pitchers. And then we didn't even bring up Luis Castillo, who's still sub 8K for absolutely no reason against Colorado. So like, I mean, all my lineups have cheap pitchers now, it would appear. I'm very much against Garrett Crochet and Blake Snell today. Holy crap.
All right, I just finalized my lineups. I'm going to export them and upload right now. This is going to take 5 seconds. I'm already on the screen. Cool. You mentioned Crochet and Snell. I have what the fuck? All right, there we go. I have no, that's not true at all. I don't want that exposure. I gotta re-export those.
It's all right. This is the beauty of MLB Live.
I don't have either one of them.
I'm going to get very, very little in this last run. I think I'm just kind of saving. Do you have like 0, or do you have like 5?
Yeah,
and
so I'm only playing 20 lineups today.
Okay.
Relatively limited scope, so I don't want the sound like I have 0 and 150. They are not showing up in that chunk of lineups. Much heavier over for Kolek and Tong, and that is leading me from a stack perspective much more to Kansas City and Houston.
Yeah, I like that.
But every time I move like 5% ROI, I'm getting like a slightly more extreme version of something, and I don't like it. Like if I take 5% off of KC, they go from being in like everything I have to essentially nothing. And that's not helping me here.
I have 0% Snell and Crochet in my top 150. So
there you go.
Just saved it. And I mean, if you run the Sims unencumbered, you're getting 96% Luis Castillo. He's projected for 21. So like he'll be somebody that I'm all right putting in a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to play 96% of him. I'll probably cap him if we really have to go old school DFS to some extent. But like he's the best pitching option on this slate. Not close. So I don't want to, the fact that we've dug into all the other guys, we're finding tournament shots and tournament guys to kind of like up our exposure to. But like Luis Castillo, I don't want to call him free square because nothing is free in baseball like that. But Luis Castillo is as close to a 3K starting guy with like a 1.5 fantasy point per minute rate in the NBA playing 28 minutes is what you're going to run into because it's Colorado. Like that's kind of what you're getting whenever you face Colorado in a great ballpark that isn't Coors Field. I think Jonah Tong is going to end up being way too much a part of my story now, but like, here we are. Matthew Boyd only got 10% in this last run. It's starting to turn more into a little bit of Jonah Tong, who's now over 20% for me. I'm going to kind of roll with this for right now.
I've got our boy Jeff Williams drop the super chat with his lineup for the 888. I'm going to load this into the single lineup sim right now so you guys can check it out. Castillo Kolek. So double pay down pitcher option. We go Ben Rice. We go Freeman, who is not in the lineup, unless you mean Freddie?
Yeah.
Oh, I was stuck on catcher. I just typed it in immediately and saw that there were 0 and started talking, even though I should have just shut the hell up. If I would just pause for 1 second, I don't have to say dumb shit. No one would ever know that it came into my head. But instead, the moment words get to my brain, they're already on the tips of my tongue. And that's not good for me in most things in life. Judge, Stanton, Volpe, Muncy, final guy, and Judge her. Teoscar Hernandez. Who am I missing here? Stanton, Hernandez. Oh, Judge. I never actually clicked the plus sign. That guy matters. 5K left on the table. Kolek Castillo, 4-man Yankee stack, 3-man Dodgers stack, 1 off Ezekiel Duran. Let's see what this bad boy looks like. Based on what I saw earlier, I'm thinking like 25 to 30%. I think the projection's a little low. Yeah, 6.2. If you take out Duran and Kolek, you get Taj Bradley and Brendan Donovan as the actual optimals in that spot as a 1-for-1 swap. Because that was the one-off hitter, one pitcher. That swap alone is a 10 or 20% increase to sim ROI. I don't think that if I pull Castillo here, it's going to make much of a difference, but just in case. Yeah, it's Castillo, Bradley, Donovan in that trio. I don't necessarily see anything else that I would want to pull from this lineup. Just out of curiosity, if I take out Bradley, take off that one-off second baseman, and pull Judge, I'm curious if it optimizes to Ohtani over Judge.
That's what I'm curious of too.
It does.
Nope.
It does not.
Weird.
Tyler Tolbert, Altuve, and then it pays up at pitcher to get Max Fried. That's a very different lineup construction. I'm not even going to run that for that moment, but I was just curious if it would default to a different pay up in that spot, but it did not. What do we got here? 6:56. 3 minutes to go before we stop talking and Greg takes over talking NFL. You've got 8 minutes to go until MLB lock. What haven't we talked about? Are we missing anything here?
No,
by the way, for anybody that cares, here's the optimal for DraftKings right now. Castillo, Fried, Diaz, Ohtani, Altuve, Paredes, Volpe, Judge, Peterson, Tolbert, 3 Houston, 2 Yanks, a Dodger, a Ranger, and a Royal. Proceed.
This is not a set it and forget it slate for me, in my opinion. I think you want to be very aware of the push and pull of what happens with the Yankees going forward. What happens with Tong and with Matt Boyd? Like, obviously, if you're making calculated stands like it would appear I am, to get to, I'm now north of 25% Tong. You have talked me into like taking him for a ride here. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
This will be also terrible, I'm sure. Congratulations to the Cubs on being optimal. But yeah, Max Fried, I think, is still a really good option early. I think Taj Bradley, I have 17% of him. That's way less than I had coming into this show. So I'm very happy with that, to have that get trimmed down. But like, I'm spreading the board with Kolek, with Boyd, you know, with a lot of these like lower owned pitchers. And then I have 0% Snell, 0% Crochet. So if either of them go completely nuclear, like a 35er, I'm going to be in shambles. But you know what? They're capable of doing it. I just kind of think that there's some really good alternatives here on this slate. Awesome late swap slate. Let's get ourselves the heck up out of here.
I'm excited now. And I'm really excited for the Tong scenario. I've got like 25 or 30 at this point in time. Remember where you heard it, folks. I can't imagine too many people are shouting out Tong on the final Wednesday of the regular season, but we brought you the goods. And remember, if he's awful, Eric liked him more.
Oh, no. Okay. Also, the Athletics. Don't forget the Athletics. Hunter Brown's been good. He has a 2.5 earned runs prop. Like, it's a bigger number than Hunter Brown normally has. And you want to try to use some of that money and put it to use. The Oakland / Sacramento / future Las Vegas Athletics. It's really an interesting stack. Purely, you know, looking at some of these 5-mans where, I mean, Houston still has a decent enough pen, even without Hader, who, you know, him or Aldis Chapman have been the 2 best relievers in baseball. But like Castillo, Gray, interesting. That's an interesting combo with him here. How does that sim out? Let's take a look on the way out.
Not only Castillo, Gray, but Altuve as a one-off second baseman, great. Aaron Judge as a one-off is permanently awesome. And Duran, totally fine for 2,200, not hitting in like the total ass end of the lineup. This is going to be like in the 60s, 50s and 60s, maybe higher. 47. I was a little optimistic.
Okay. I'm all right with it. I'm all right with it. Again, I think that they're an interesting evening slate. If you're trying to go to the cheap ass end of pitcher and get away, especially if Crochet doesn't have a good game, getting away from some of the Houston ownership that will surely come in, and we'll take a look at Yankees ownership after the fact. I'll jump into the Stokastic MLB DFS channel as well and take a look at that. Rather than just in the Lindy channel all day. But yeah, I think you want to be paying attention to this Yankees ownership at lock.
I tried to go to Tong. It gave me basically the same lineup, and it was much worse. If I go to just Tong, does it give me DeGrom? Okay, it gives me Castillo, Altuve, Willie Adames, Shohei Ohtani spends the full bag. Got to check it. Our boy Tong, I want him to show up in like a 25 or 30% ROI here. How about 75? Does that work for you guys? Does that work? Are you not entertained?
My God.
All right, guys. Greg Ehrenberg right now on either this channel or the OddsShopper channel, going live, solo edition, talking all things Showdown for tomorrow. Eric, before we leave, tell the people where to find you.
You can find me over at the OddsShopper YouTube channel. I will be over there doing Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks for MLB 12 games tomorrow. Already started working on that about an hour ago. And NFL, we'll have a great NFL game, Arizona, Seattle, that Greg will be breaking down for you as well. But you can check out the OddsShopper YouTube channel, get my takes on that as well. Lindy Discord, firing that up every single day. Got social stuff going on at Eric Lindquist. No lack of things to do. So check that out. And then while you're at it, we got NBA thread rocking here for Josh Engelman, which is beautiful time. So check out all the goodness that we got going here. Everybody, show the love at the like button, especially because then I don't have to get my dick cut off, because apparently that's a bit now.
Like and subscribe, everybody. Follow me on Twitter. I dropped the Utah Jazz today as a team preview. Hornets were yesterday. Nets the day before. Washington Wizards incoming. Follow me on Tails. I dropped a bet for each one of those teams as well, so we could sweat those for the entire season. When you finished saying what you were saying, I thought you were about to say no blockers, which made me laugh pretty significantly because it felt like our noon call. Either way, guys, go check out Greg right now. We'll talk to you later. Win some money. Go Tong.